All right, everybody, get ready, because today we are diving headfirst into the wild world of space colonization.
Ooh, space colonization, my favorite.
And we're not talking about just like, planting a flag on Mars. This is the real deal. Think building settlements, living off-world, the whole shebang.
Yeah, it's actually kind of crazy how, this is becoming a reality and not just sci-fi anymore.
Right. Like for a long time, space travel was just this impossible dream because it cost, well, an astronomical amount of money.
For sure. Astronomical, literally. Huh. But things are changing. Reusable rockets are becoming more common, and the costs are actually starting to go down. What used to be pure science fiction is starting to actually seem possible.
It really is amazing. And the thing is, this isn't just some far-out idea. I mean, Stephen Hawking himself said that humanity might go extinct if we don't figure out how to live beyond Earth.
Yeah. It's like we need a backup plan for all of humanity.
Talk about high stakes, right?
Yeah, no kidding. But it really shows how important space colonization is. It's about survival, basically. And we're already seeing that play out, too. Like the US and China are in a whole new kind of space race.
It's not just about getting to the moon anymore, is it?
No way. It's about who can, set up a permanent base first.
So like the ultimate land grab, but on the moon.
Haha, pretty much. But it's not just about planting a flag and calling it a day, Establishing that first lunar base, it's about way more than that. You're talking control of resources, strategic advantage, even just shaping the whole future of space. It could completely change things as we know them.
Wow. So are we going to start mining asteroids now instead of having gold rushes?
Yeah.
But seriously, what kind of economic potential are we talking about here?
Well, that asteroid mining thing isn't as crazy as it sounds. Imagine, tons of rare earth metals just waiting to be mined. And water ice, which we could use for fuel or even to, support life.
So we could take some pressure off of Earth's resources.
Yeah, and that's just the beginning. Think about how much this could help reduce our impact on the environment if we could get these things from space.
That's amazing. A total win-win, at least when it comes to resources.
Yeah.
But, okay, I have to ask, doesn't this all seem kind of colonial? Like, are we just going to repeat history all over again,
I know what you mean, and it's a super important question. We absolutely have to learn from the past and make sure we're not just repeating the same mistakes. The good news is we already have agreements like the Outer Space Treaty. It's supposed to prevent countries from exploiting celestial bodies.
So like a set of rules for space.
Exactly. The whole idea is that space belongs to everyone, not just the first ones to get there.
Okay, that makes sense. But even if we can figure out all the ethical stuff, space is still, well, space. It's not exactly known for being easy to live in. What are some of the practical challenges of actually making space livable long term?
Well, for starters, there's radiation. Imagine trying to build something that can protect you from constant cosmic rays.
Yeah, and you can't exactly just slap on some sunscreen.
Huh. No, you can't. And the challenges aren't just physical either. Think about the psychology of being isolated in space for a really long time. That can have a huge impact.
Yeah, it's easy to forget about that part of it. We're used to having day and night, and obviously gravity. Who knows how our minds and bodies would react to being in a completely different environment long term.
Right. And speaking of gravity, or the lack of it, that's another huge challenge. Our bodies evolved with Earth's gravity. Being in low gravity for a long time could do all sorts of strange things to us.
It's a lot to consider, that's for sure.
It is. We're talking bone loss, muscle atrophy. There might even be things we haven't even thought about.
And then there's the dust.
Oh, don't even get me started on the dust.
I've heard it can be a real problem.
It's awful. Super fine, abrasive, gets everywhere. You're talking about potential breathing problems, equipment malfunctions, even dust storms that last for weeks.
Okay, so maybe space is more like a dangerous camping trip than a relaxing vacation?
Haha, right. Look, space is unforgiving. If we want to live there, we've got a lot of work to do. We need to figure out shielding, life support, how to stay sane when you're basically trapped in a box.
Like we need to reinvent everything.
Exactly.
So let's say we figure all of that out. We've got the shielding, the life support. We've even figured out space psychology. Then what? What does a space colony actually look like?
Well, that is where things get really interesting. There's so many different ideas out there. We could build underground bases on Mars, or even, believe it or not, floating cities in the clouds of Venus.
Wait, floating cities? On Venus? Now that sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi novel. Floating cities, it's wild. Tell me more. How would that even work on Venus?
Well, the surface of Venus is super hostile, crazy hot, and the pressure is unbelievable.
Yeah, not exactly a picnic spot.
No, not at all. But get this, if you go up into the atmosphere, way up there, 50 kilometers, it actually gets kind of Earth-like. The temperature and pressure are way more manageable.
So we're talking about living in, what, giant blimps or something?
Think more like huge self-contained habitats, filled with breathable air, powered by the sun. We could even mine resources from the surface and pull them up.
Okay, that's pretty wild. So underground bunkers on Mars, cloud cities on Venus. But what about Earth's orbit? Isn't that like a good starting point?
For sure. I mean, you could say the International Space Station is kind of a prototype space colony already.
Sure.
It's taught us so much about living in space, for long periods of time. We can use that knowledge to build even bigger, more independent space stations.
It seems like a lot of these ideas for space colonization are about using stuff we can find in space rather than bringing everything from Earth.
Exactly. That's the key to sustainable space colonization. We have to learn to live off the land, so to speak. Except in this case, the land is, well, space.
Uh-huh. Yeah, slightly different.
Asteroid mining could give us raw materials. We can harvest water ice for life support, use solar energy for power.
It's like pioneering all over again, but like on a cosmic scale.
Right, and it goes way beyond just surviving. Imagine 3D printing human organs in space, or making medicine in space-based labs where everything is totally sterile.
It's amazing to think about all the possibilities. But even if we can find all these resources and make all this cool stuff, how do we actually get everything out there? And the people, too. Space travel takes a long time, even with the best technology.
That's true, but there are people working on that too, like think ion drives or even fusion engines. Those could cut travel time down a lot.
Fusion engines, that sounds pretty intense.
It's cutting-edge stuff, for sure. And hey, you never know. We might even come up with some crazy ideas like space tethers or solar sails.
Okay, now those definitely sound like something out of Star Wars.
Uh-huh, maybe. But remember, today's science fiction could be tomorrow's reality. We've got to keep pushing the limits.
That's true. Okay, let's say we figure out the whole transportation thing. What about the social aspect? How do we build, like, actual societies in these space colonies? Like, how do you have a government or laws or even just, entertainment?
It's a huge question, and honestly, we don't have all the answers yet. But people are working on it. Some think space colonies should be super self-reliant and democratic.
So, like, each colony would be its own little mini society.
Yeah, something like that, with their own rules, their own ways of doing things. It's a whole new world, literally, so we might need to rethink some things.
That's fascinating. So it's not just about the science and tech, it's about building new societies from scratch.
Exactly. We're talking about social engineering, ethics, all these huge ideas. It's about more than just escaping a messed up Earth. It's about what it means to be human, what it means to be a civilization. It's really deep stuff.
It sounds like it. So space colonization, it's not just one thing, is it?
Yeah.
It's this massive undertaking with so many different angles.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it so interesting to think about. It's not every day you get to contemplate the future of humanity,
I know, right? It's a lot to take in. We've gone from mining asteroids to floating cities to, like, the philosophy of space governments, and that's just scratching the surface.
And we're not even done yet.
It really feels like we're on the edge of something huge. Like, space colonization could change everything.
I know, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot to wrap your head around. We've gone from the super practical stuff like how to mine an asteroid to these crazy ideas like floating cities on Venus. We even got into the philosophy of how you would govern a space colony.
And we only just scratched the surface. Space colonization is like this huge puzzle with so many pieces.
It really is. So where does this all leave us? What does it actually mean for us back here on Earth?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? This isn't just about science experiments or exploring the unknown. It's a fundamental change in how we think about ourselves, our society, our whole place in the universe. The choices we make about space colonization, those are going to affect us for generations. No pressure, right? But seriously, it shows how important this all is. It's not just about sending rockets into space. It's about shaping the future of humanity.
And speaking of pushing the limits of what's possible, there's this one more thing I wanted to mention. Have you ever heard of something called a Matryoshka brain?
A Matryoshka brain. I think I've heard that somewhere before, but you're going to have to refresh my memory. Sounds like really intense, like something out of a sci-fi movie.
It kind of is, but in a good way. It's this hypothetical megastructure, and I mean mega. That would be like built around an entire star, and it would use the star's energy to power a supercomputer, like beyond anything we can imagine.
Wait, a computer the size of a star. Now we're really getting into what-if territory.
I know, right? But that's why I love this idea. It shows us just how much potential there is out there. We're not just talking about going to other planets. We're talking about expanding our minds, our technology, how we even understand the universe.
Wow. That is definitely something to think about. Space colonization, it's not just about getting off this planet. It's about pushing the limits of what's possible for humanity, for technology, for everything.
It really is.
Well, I think we've given everyone a lot to think about today. We've covered a lot of ground, from the very real challenges of living in space to these mind-blowing ideas about the future. But one thing's for sure, space colonization is a topic that's full of possibility and wonder. And honestly, who knows what incredible discoveries and inventions are waiting for us out there in the vastness of space.
Who knows, indeed. The future of humanity in space, it's a pretty exciting thing to think about.
It really is. And on that note, we're going to have to start our descent back to Earth. But that doesn't mean the conversation has to end. In fact, I hope this deep dive has only made you more curious about space and about our future among the stars. So keep exploring, keep asking questions, and most importantly, keep imagining the possibilities. Because as we've learned today when it comes to space, the only limit is our imagination.
Well said. Until next time, keep looking up.